Welcome everyone to the virtual tasting. This is Emma doing a pre-record actually because unfortunately I didn't hit the record button. So we've missed the first few minutes of the tasting, but when it jumps into the cut, it will still be on whiskey number one for the tasting. I will still go through all of the usual stuff, but uh, sorry. It's been a week. So we're joined tonight by the Royal Mile Whiskies Cask Procurement Extraordinaire, Sam Brabbs. Sam is packed with meetings today, no doubt in the lead up to Christmas season. So he does have to head off at 8:30 p.m. sharp, which means this will be a on-time tasting, which almost never happens. So, of course, we wanted to hear all about these whiskies and dive right into it. But as this is pre-recorded editing, Emma, I can take my time in telling you the housekeeping. So obviously, virtual tasting housekeeping is always in our Zoom link email. Don't drink and drive is the most important one. And it's always up on our YouTube channel, along with all the recordings of our virtual tastings, including this one. We always ask to pop tasting notes and questions in the chat, which I will read out during the tasting. And the tasting order for this one is as follows. So whiskey number one is the Dormant Distilling Co. 1998 Imperial 25-year-old. Whiskey number two is the 1995 Glenburgie 30-year-old. Whiskey number three is the 1996 Nevis 29-year-old. So 96 Nevis. Ooh. Whiskey number four is the only one in the lineup that I tasted before tonight, and that is the Old Orkney 2002 Old Reekie 15-year-old. Whiskey number five is the 1998 Ardmore 25-year-old, and whiskey number six is the 2007 Calvilla 17-year-old. So without further ado, I will suggest you crack into the Imperial 25-year-old. And we will jump into where Emma hit the recording. Pretty fast, Emma hit the recording, and get you underway. We haven't missed much. We're still talking about the whiskey, but I hope you enjoy. Take care.
You could get Imperials from Signatory Vintage. 1995 vintages were very common back when I started in the company. And you could buy those bottles of whiskey for about £45. That's kind of the equivalent of Balvenie and Glenfiddich. It was, and to be able to buy something that was either a single cask or two casks or three casks bottling that was at that price and was a closed distillery back then, absolutely blew my mind. I thought, wow, this is like whiskey history, and you can just get it for a really good price. And Signatory were always very good at that, and they still are, in terms of just being very, very keen on the pricing and not adding, they don't have a huge marketing department and brand team that they have to pay, that have to map out the next decade of bottling, so they can always just be honest with their pricing. And so that for years was reason why we all talked about Imperial always in the shop, and it was such a favourite. So if you ever meet anybody that's worked at Royal Mile Whiskies, there's a good chance that they've tried Imperial and they really like it. So as soon as we could get our chance to bottle in a cask again and revitalise Dormant Distillery Company as a label, we took it. And this was just a great thing that came across our desk, and we were just delighted with it. It's an amazing kind of archetype, I think, of what those 90s Imperials are like, which they're not quite grassy, quite tropical. I think, just really elegant old space cider that, is probably, getting into its last decades really of accessibility now, I would say. I wonder in 10, 20 years whether you'll be able to find any Imperial that's not really highly priced and just out of reach really. So it's even at a younger age, Imperial was such an interesting jam. I've tried some 10 to 12-year-olds that were bottled in the 2000s, and they were equally delicious. But I think as it's getting older now, we're getting into these 25 to 30-year-old, especially for those 90s vintages, which I think they were just in the last years. Pernod were just firing out as much as they could really, and there was just a commercial decision to shut the distillery and replace it with Dalmonic, which is now sitting on the
Yeah.
same site, but it's totally different, completely different.
Yeah, it seemed like, as someone who's tried a bit of Dalmanac, it seemed like a choice, an interesting choice. Yeah, all the Imperial I've had has been wonderful. I think Hang hit it on the nose as well. Exactly same kind of notes you were talking about, grassy and tropical. He says, well, they say grassy and some pineapple. Also, I am aware that Ollie's going to absolutely murder me for forgetting to hit the record button early, but that's okay. We're only on whiskey number one. Like, it's been a long week. But yeah, Leo's great
Well,
notes, floral on the nose, shortbread dough, some tropical on the palate as well. But yeah, and long legs on the for a 44%. Yeah, it's very oily for a 44%.
yeah,
Yeah.
indeed. And this was, I don't think we didn't dilute this at all. It was really cask strength.
Wow.
So I think it was it just whatever ever had happened to this casket, it just um progressed the way it did. And you do find this quite a lot. ABV is such an interesting thing. With you do just presume anything that goes as low as that in at this age, you would just think, oh, it must be diluted, but it's just sometimes it happens. It's the cask that we looked at very, very recently that we were really hoping to get a 35-year-old from a lovely distillery that we would have died to get a few years ago, but we got it regauged the other day and it was 39.6% it gone. That was it. So
No.
we had to say goodbye to it because just something that we
Oh,
couldn't. So yeah,
that's
these things
devastating.
happen, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to whiskey
Yeah.
number two, the Glenburgie.
Hmm.
And Rose got a question, and I've got a question as well. Um, Rose is, why is Imperial almost always low at that 40% ABV? Was it a low fill strength? And for me, the question is, when it dips below 40%, what do you do? Like, what happens?
Yeah. I don't know if there's any. I think Imperial's just always been bottled at these kind of strength. Whether I don't think there's an explanation really as to if why there's any kind of trend in that at all. Really, I've not ever heard about that. So yeah, I'm not too sure. I mean, there's definitely, like I say, I suppose there was just a prolific accessibility for it at one point. It was a blending malt, something that wasn't going to be guarded for single malt brands or anything. It was just being sent to blenders at one point. So I imagine a lot of independent bottlers have just bottled it either diluted at 46 or at cask strength. But I don't think, as far as I know, there was no special conditions for it in terms of its ABV or filling strength. I don't believe there was. It's just again some of the magic of the way these casks interact with the spirit, and sometimes the wood's just not as tight as it should be, or there's a bizarre condition. I think if they could work it out, some of these mysteries, they would we would all find it a lot more boring. But
Yeah, I find as well, like some specific distilleries tend to just plummet after a certain age. Like Glenturret's one of them. After like 30 years old, it just starts tanking in ABV. So
hmm, interesting. And sorry, what was your question, Emma?
oh, sorry. My question as well is what do you do then when it dips below that 30 at that 40%? Do you vat it with a higher strength, similar-ish age if you can?
You have a choice. It depends whether you have another cask to maybe use it with. If you're in the very lucky position where you could have an aged whiskey that's in, there's a series of two or three casks, and one of them is dipped, then you would naturally vat some of the others together just to make it achieve that minimum of 40. But if it doesn't, then it would probably be resold or passed on, and it's still a valuable product. It's just it can't be bottled as its natural strength. It probably be blended as long as that final quantity, that final ABV is above 40% in the bottle. That's all that really matters with the regulations. But, yeah, it's a curious little problem that you find at times. But yeah, this Glenburgie, this is such a little gem that's just again, it was just presented to us, I think, late last year as an option for a cask, and the way that we approach casks for the Royal Mile Whiskies bottlings is some of it is planned, some of it is casks we've been acquiring over the last few years, and we've kind of put our kind of eyes on, right, that'd be really good for a small batch bottling, or that'd be really good as a single cask. And some of it is pretty reactive, I would say. We are in a position where we're kind of listening to the customers that come into the shop that buy bottles for our trade side of the business as well. We're keeping an eye on what we're being offered as well. We are also a customer of independent bottlings and things as well. So we're always looking and seeing what the kind of value of whiskey is at the market at the moment. So value also is a real talking point, and everybody I speak to in the industry is all talking about, the customer now is wanting to spend, not necessarily less, but they want to get more for their money now, and that's really important. And so that's something that we always kind of try to, strike the balance of. We want something that really represents the distillery, that is interesting, that talks, that is worth hard-earned money, really, and also something that is just going to kind of stand out as well. There's different categories that we look at. We want to either have something that's just really great drinker, really easy, something that is in very kind of, I suppose, less active cask, something that will just show the spirit off to be really elegant and transparent. But we also will go for things that are a bit weird and a bit different, and I think we all want to be surprised, don't we? I think that's part of the great thing about whiskey, is that there's always something that's going to prove your opinion wrong. We always get so opinionated. We remember debates in whiskey are so kind of lively at times, but it's nice to be reminded that actually it's not always how you think it is. I love that. It's probably my favorite part of it. So Glenburgie for me, it's something I've never really tried very many in sherry casks. It's something that is, again, it's another one of these similar to Imperial. Really, it was this Chivas Pernod owned distillery that that is just kind of really reserved for blending. Ballantine's is such a big part, I think, of the Glenburgie story, and so they don't need to kind of spend money to create a brand of Glenburgie. It just seems to have a really valued place in blending requirements. So it's something that, again, only independent bottlings. I think there might be a Ballantine's version of Glenburgie out there, but it's really not easy to
Yeah,
find.
I think they've done some of the limited release, um, 17-year-old. I think they did a couple 17-year-old Glenburgies or something. Yeah, it's definitely hidden away, probably more than Milton Duff and the others that they have. But yeah, it's one of those whiskeys I feel like it's so valuable kind of in the blending space, because just looking at the two tasting notes, one is so fruity, apricot jam and a jazz breach and velvety, but then Leo's getting that dark chocolate and oaky spice, and I can kind of get both of those. I often get the caramel tones from Glenburgie, but then at the same time, a lot of the older stuff gives tropical fruit. So I feel like it's a um, very much a get you a whiskey that can do both kind of
Yeah,
distillery. It
definitely. And
really
I,
hits the mark
I
there.
think this cask as well, this cask really, shows that you can get these lovely tropical older Speyside notes, but also when it mixes with sherry and it's just got that right kind of interaction, you can just get this fantastic, extra complexity. You can either, some people will be, want one or the other, but when you can get that right balance, it's superb, and it's something I wouldn't have expected from Glenburgie. So again, it was a no-brainer for us when this was offered as a potential cask, and I think we maybe waited for it to get 30 years old. That was the only thing that I suppose, interaction that we had. And sometimes, again, when you're looking at casks, you have to just make that decision of, can we just wait another 4 months and, have a nice 30-year-old Glenburgie rather than a 29? Sometimes it just works like that. And often you're rewarded for a bit more patience as well. We can be too, too
You're
impatient and
right.
want to bottle something immediately. It's amazing, it's really good, but you go, oh wait, no, wait a few more months, and then when you try the final product, it's worth it, definitely.
Yeah. It's still got so much freshness to it as well. I think the last Glenmogie kind of at this age range was the the Lucky Choice Asian bottling, which was 23 years old of Glenburgie. Very kind of similar. I don't know if anyone in the group was on that anchor tasting, but yeah, super. Yeah, uh, yeah. Both are similarly kind of fresh, which is nice to see that the 7 year
Mm,
difference doesn't really impact that vibrancy.
yeah,
We might move on, going from something vibrant to something much more funky. We might move on to the Ben Nevis 29-year-old. So, was it as like cost procurement person for the company? Are there like some barrels, some casks and stuff that are harder to get your hands on? I know 96 Ben Nevises tend to be high demand items.
definitely. Yeah, I mean, Springbanks, Ben Nevis's, especially of this age. I would say for a while, anything really 1980s, 1990s was very hard. It was they were being guarded closely by various companies. But no, I mean, yeah, 1996. It's a very odd um, way that this distillery has suddenly become a iconic, especially because of this vintage in particular. And it was an amazing kind of journey to see that. When I was getting into whiskey, but Ben Nevis was one of the, I don't know, maybe the second or third distillery I'd ever been to, and I was not really that impressed by it, and I was just not ready for it. I think at that time, I was just totally finding my own little way into the whiskey world, and learning what I liked and what I enjoyed, but the distillery wasn't that impressive for me when I visited it, and it was, had this very weird touristy video called Hector McDram, which was you can find that on YouTube. If anybody does some digging, actually, if you want to find Hector McDram on YouTube, that's worth it. It's totally worth it. But anyway, so it's these 1996 vintages suddenly when they started to emerge on the market, you just seem to pick up momentum, and then we did a few exclusive bottlings as well with various independent bottlers when in this kind of period where we weren't quite doing our own bottlings again. We partnered with people like Berry Brothers and Thompson Brothers and Elixir Distillers as well to do a series of these 1996s, and it was just this thing that you were just like, wow, what suddenly happened about this with this vintage in this era? What were they doing that was it was so interesting, and the consensus, I think, from hearing it from people like Sakinder Singh, who is pretty confident, and Angus as well. It was just their kind of approach to yeast. Really, Ben Nevis was using this brewer's yeast, and for whatever reason, the fermentation times that they're using, cut points, etc. It's all just kind of fallen into place, and so you get this lovely kind of big tropical fruit funkiness that. Especially when we started doing I think it was about 7 years ago, we started bottling, also, or at least working with people like Berrybers to get these 96 bottled. That we were noticing this really big funky character that was just like, wow, it's really interesting. And then the word just got out, and I think you saw so many different companies bottling them now, and yeah, the casks have just become scarcer. So this cask in particular, this was a private individual that has got in touch with us, and it had been at the distillery its entire life. So when we bottled it, we literally just pulled it from Ben Nevis. It's very rare that the cask industry in Scotland is so connected to various brokers and independent bottlers and people, and there's lots of swaps that happen and things that get moved around, so it's quite rare that you get a cask that was just sat at that distillery for its entire lifetime. So it was it was a real great little gem, and I think we're just at this 29-year-old age as well. I think we're starting to see, right, what's the next stage for this vintage? What's 96 going to be like in 5 to 10 years? What's the 30-plus-year-old version is going to be like? Are they going to dial back the fruit a bit? Are they going to be a bit more minerally? Are they going to be getting to the waxy kind of style as well? So there's lots of anticipation there, I think. And this one to me was it was really nice and funky, but I think it was ever so slightly kind of bit more softer, I would say. There's definitely
Yeah.
been some bigger, funky Ben Nevises I've tried before, but still really, really amazing to be able to, get our hands on it.
Yeah,
Um,
I feel like the funk is definitely tempered.
yeah,
Like Leah says classic Nevis funk. And Michael, I think, hits it on the head, old school, but it's posh. I always, when for me, that funky Ben Nevis flavor profile always tastes like roast lemon chicken. Like, when you get like
Interesting.
a really nice roast chicken with like the lemon wheels under the skin and the rosemary, that real kind of savory but bright tone. I think somebody else said it. Michael K also had a slightly bitter orange. On the nose, all I got was Sunny Boy icy poles, like that, like
Right.
real like kind of sugared orange tone to it as well. Maybe that was just me, but yeah, the palate was like unmistakably Ben Nevis. And yeah, Hang says as well, it's unmistakable. It's 96 Ben Nevis. Very nice. Um, yeah, Leo first tried Ben Nevis at a pub in Fort William. I've only ever been to the petrol station across the road from Ben Nevis. That's about as close as I've ever gotten because they're closed on Sundays. But yeah, super, super cool. Leo is also saying they never did peated runs in the 90s, didn't they? I don't know about that.
It's possible. It's definitely possible. There are always little curious experiments that happen there. Yeah, I'm not sure if it was documented when they were doing it. But there's definitely been. I mean, there was a brand that they were producing for a while, McDonald's. I don't think they still do it actually,
Yeah,
which is
McDonald traditional, yeah, which is like lightly
using
peated.
yeah, which
Yeah.
is using some peated spirit as well. So yeah, it's totally possible. Um, and then they also remotely are owned by Nika, obviously. So there's lots of Ben Nevis that was being sent in bulk to
Japan.
Japan as well, and lots of these really interesting, slightly controversial bottlings, I suppose. They've got excellent Japanese whiskey and excellent Scotch whiskey in them, but yeah, it's so that there could very well have been some peated Ben Nevis. Who knows that was produced for that reason? But yeah, it's a bit of a mystery. Don't know.
I think that kind of ties perfectly into the next whiskey that we've got lined up. But yeah, we had our tasting with Angus last week, and it was for a bottling that we did called Ben Nevis from the Barrel. Very much
Yeah,
paying homage to the Japanese ownership of Ben Nevis Distillery. But yeah, I think I'm just conscious of time, so I want to make sure that we can squeeze as much information about all these whiskies in as well. But yeah, it seems kind of thematic to talk about Ben Nevis and then move on to another exclusive bottling this time for you guys and not for us in Australia that Angus has had a hand in.
yeah. So yeah, I suppose what we've tried up until now are bottlings that we've kind of done ourselves, but we also have had many years and decades of working with companies, independent bottlers, and distilleries to do exclusive projects. And yeah, it's always a fun thing to see what you get presented with, and then getting the choice to kind of pick something and then work together. But the decadent drink side, yeah, they're kind of, I suppose, yeah, cousins of us now. We have the same owners, Ian McClune, who owns these companies and bought Royal Mile Whiskies a few years ago, has meant that there's really great interaction and kind of collaboration now. And with decadent drinks, they're really impressive to see kind of how they've changed even in the last few years, and their kind of new journey and their new brandings and various kind of ranges are really kind of fascinating. And Angus, as you guys will be aware, is such an incredible fountain of knowledge for these things, and it's got a really interesting understanding and unique kind of approach that no one else does. And he's got that understanding of old school spirits as well, which is really really amazing. So this one in particular, this was yeah, I have to be a little bit mysterious about it, but it was essentially uh, a project that had. So it was originally a sherry butt, a refill sherry butt, distilled in 2002 from. I mean, most definitely Highland Park. I mean, the taste is absolutely kind of Highland Park for me, but it's referred to as Orkney when we acquired it, but it's definitely I think very confidently would be Highland Park, and then it was bottled in 2018, so it's actually a something that was bottled quite a while ago. So it was bottled at 15 years old. Um, it's absolutely one of these mysterious little things that you just acquire occasionally. projects that have fallen through for various reasons with other companies, and whiskey that just sits in bottle or in a container after it's been something has happened, a project has fallen through. So this was something that was presented to us as an option a few months ago, and we thought, oh wow, this would be an amazing little thing to work with the Decadent Drinks on and come up with a really great brand for the festival that we were. In case anybody doesn't know, Edinburgh Festival is quite a big time for for us in Edinburgh, and it's something that the shop is kind of absolutely in the middle of the madness, and to have something that we could have for that would be launched in Edinburgh is a really great idea. And so yeah, Angus came up with the Old Orkney for Auld Reekie name, which if you don't know Auld Reekie, that's the old name for Edinburgh, and it was due to the fact that there was so overcrowded the old town, and the population in Edinburgh in the 16th, 17th centuries it was just absolute carnage in terms of the population, and also the breweries, also the distilleries, also the factories that were all in very tightly packed together. So the city became known as Auld Reekie, and that just means old smoke in kind of the colloquialism. So it's a really nice way to join up this Old Orkney brand with the name Auld Reekie and have it for a shop in Edinburgh. So yeah, it was kind of the idea behind it really, and I think it was just an excellent example of Highland Park from this era. 2002, it was just in those early years after Edrington had bought Highland Distillers, so I don't think there'd been a huge amount of modernisation done at that point. I think that was all coming later. So yeah, a little bit of a curiosity, and I think there's been quite a few, especially those early 2000s, in various Highland Park and Orkney bottlings that you find out there. There's some absolutely crackers, and yeah, Highland Park and sherry is just one of those excellent combinations, isn't it? And it's really, really delicious. And the only thing we did with this was dilute it slightly, so I think it was at cask strength. What, I can't remember the ABV on this again.
It's 48.5% is what it says on my sample, but we do have a penchant for typos. So,
No,
but
that
I
sounds
do
right.
I could go check my bottle, but it's over in the other room. But yeah,
I'm
it's
sure that's right.
yeah,
Um,
it's gorgeous. I remember like walking into the shop. Firstly, it was my first time in the shop, and I was just like, my mom and sister were with me, and I'm just like starry-eyed. I don't know. They're like, okay, we're gonna leave you now. You have fun. But yeah, the population situation hasn't really changed in Edinburgh since those early days. I did have to like elbow my way through the Edinburgh Fringe Festival crowds to drop off a sample at the shop. So yeah, it was great. But yeah, I remember I was like, oh well, I adore Angus. We've been friends for ages. Got to try this, and I think me yelling about it to the rest of the crew at the Whiskey List is the reason that we've got it on the tasting tonight, not something else. But yeah, so super cool. I love, yeah, Michael, definitely that like touch of coastal smoke, and sherry soaked fruitcake. I think, and probably a couple of you guys in the group can agree with me. I'm a sucker for bourbon cask Highland Park, like
mm.
the full measure. Yeah, I see some nods. The bourbon cask Highland Park really does it for me, but I feel like this is the right amount of sherry where it just lets it shine, lets it sing, lets that smoke come through, and it's not too much. So I'm really enjoying this, but yeah, Ian's sat by the beach, drinking his samples, and oh, he's propped us up as well to get a lovely view of the Perth beach, which is nice. But yeah, the Ben Nevis is giving him some salted caramel vibes, and there's some heathery notes in this Highland Park. Yeah, I definitely it's that kind of floral heather plant, soft smoke tone to it. Leo
It's
says
always
it
that
pairs
curious,
with the
yeah, it's that
30-year-old old
curious
ladies.
heathery kind of note, isn't it, with Highland Park that
Yeah,
is just recognisable, and even though there are lots of Orkneys being bottled, it's that easy way to find out whether it's Highland Park or not. Is it that heathery? Is it that little kind of peaty heatheriness that
yeah.
breaks through,
I think
even in a
the
even in a
only
subtle?
Yeah, the only other way I could kind of describe it is sometimes that heathery note is for me like in my brain comparable with like if you took orange peel and made it salty, like a salted orange peel. It's kind of got that similar characteristic to it. That's often a tasting note I get as well, predominantly in ex-bourbon cask, but like a little bit here, it's turned into that like fruit cake, tea cake drizzle sugariness as well. So really, really cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Mm,
Um,
yeah. What is it? Earl says, I think older Highland Park, like early 90s, did better in bourbon, but the post 2000s and younger bottles do well in sherry. Yeah, I think there've been some like really good ones. I mean, and all love to the distillery and all love to Edrington, but the modern core range stuff, which I'm not sure if they rejigged the casking on it with the new labels, but yeah, the modern kind of stuff hasn't really floated my boat through my career. So
I once had a, I once was again another example of showing how your opinions can get shown up at times. I was convinced that that all older Highland Parks in the 90s, those were the times of, especially those 12-year-olds that an 18-year-old that were starting to get real note. I think it was Paul Packle, gave it a huge kind of honor at one point, and there was quite a few times where Highland Park 12 was really elevated as a core bottling. I was once, yeah, at a tasting with I think it must have been 2016, 17, where with an old 12-year-old, and it was all blind, it was an old 12-year-old, it was not something else, and there was a brand new 12-year-old. And I think the room all preferred the new one. I think that just showed you and we were all just absolutely blown away by it. I thought, wow, this is incredible. And we're like, are you sure? Are you absolutely sure this is the new one? And yeah, it just shows you, I think people are looking for certain things at certain times as well. It's yeah, and I do think it as a distillery, it's gone through changes, but it's still producing great liquid, I think, and I do think those new bottlings are very. I still think they honour what has come before, and I think that's consistency is one of these things that very few distilleries I think really achieve nowadays, especially if they're doing their own core ranges, and anything that has lasted for 20, 30 years and is still a great buy is amazing, I think. And things like Old Pulteney, some of these absolute classics that are just every time you go back to them, you think, oh, maybe this time it's not going to be as good. Maybe Lagavulin 16 is going to finally be rubbish, and then you go back to it and you go, oh no, it's brilliant. It's still very good.
yeah, annoyingly, despite the high, price increases, it is still a very, very good whiskey. Well, yeah, I agree as well that like the kind of base core spirit that Highland Park has to work with is just yeah, hands down, really good. And I think I will revisit the core range again, sometime and like look upon it with new eyes and having had more indie bottlings of Highland Park. But yeah, we might move on to I mean, like in terms of consistency and quality, I think Ardmore is kind of the unsung hero of the Suntory family. I think yeah.
I would
eh,
agree with you, although I'd probably argue a little bit and say Glengarry was just as underappreciated.
Yes.
But at the
Yeah.
same time, yeah, Ardmore is one of these names that everybody's starting to talk about again, which is amazing. And it was for a long time just I don't know, dismissed as a bit of a boring whiskey, and the kind of Ardmore legacy, which was the core bottling that you could get for a while, was always deemed as just a boring supermarket whiskey. But the independent bottlings, again, showing up the quality of the distillery and showing how incredibly consistent it is, but also unique and different. And the lightly peated stuff compared to unpeated compared to the heavily peated Ardmores that you're starting to find on the market are all absolutely fascinating. And yeah, this 1998 one that we acquired, I think again, I don't know if there was many choices here. There might have been a 99 or a 2000 potentially, and that we considered, but it just seemed to tick all the boxes for us. It was this really elegant, lightly peated dram. It had kind of a farminess to it as well that we really enjoyed, and just a great example of this distillery and an age that you don't really find very much in independent bottlings as well. The kind of 2000s and 2010s have resulted in a lot of younger Ardmores that have made it out there, which are being appreciated. But kind of this era where it was still direct fired stills and a little bit slower distillation, all this kind of stuff that has resulted in a more interesting sooty. Yeah, that's a really good note. Sooty Ardmore. That's something I always note as well
Yeah.
with the
Yeah,
character. But
I
mm,
often get like roast parsnips, like a
mm,
really lovely roast vegetables kind of tone to it. So it's always those like
yeah,
white tuberous vegetables that are still quite fresh when you bite into them. So yeah.
no, that's
Mm.
really good.
Yeah, as
Yeah,
Leah says,
it's
it's Lafroig light, diet Lafroig, is what
fried
we
light.
affectionately call
It's
Ardmore
good.
here. But yeah.
But yeah, it's a distillery that I think they will eventually get round to the really interesting core range, and we'll be able to access some really nice liquid from there. But even if we don't, it's not the end of the world, and it's again, it's part of the joy of being into whiskey, and always finding something new and finding a bottling that's it's going to surprise you. If there's more Ardmore that's being bottled independently now, it's not a bad thing. Um,
Yeah,
but
100%. Do you think
yeah,
as well that the reason we don't see so much of this older, like Ardmore in indie bottlings, because they do have a core 30-year-old in their range? So is one of the things they tend to hold some of the older stock close to their chest and not sell it on?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure to be honest. I think it's the lots of it was, and I think it still is going into teachers, obviously, and that was kind of one of the big kind of Ardmore and Glendronach and what were the other ones that were big teachers whiskies back in the day. I think Ardmore still is probably a very key blending whiskey, and I think they just hadn't. I don't know, maybe it weren't operating at full capacity in the 90s, and so what was going into blendings was going straight, just quite directly there, and then what was being sold off to brokers got used in the early 2000s potentially. I really don't know. Yeah, it's but hopefully we'll start to see a little bit more. There was almost I don't know. Hopefully I did see somewhere on a cask list that there was some 1980s Ardmore that was starting to make it out there. Pretty old, which would be really interesting to see. Just how has this kind of spirit lasted over 40 years? That would be really impressive to find out. Will it be up there in terms of some Campbelltown or a Nevis or Islay, some of these really robust spirits that just seem to age beautifully? Will we get the same with Ardmore? So yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll see something like that.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see. I kind of feel like an old Ardmore would go the same way as like Caolila. I've tried
Mm,
young Caolilas and I've tried a 34-year-old Caolila and it was just such like a soft and elegant version that had almost no smoke uh of all the sweetness that you get in the younger ones. It had that like freshly baked cookies out of the oven kind of tone to it. So yeah, I'm curious to kind of I would think that Ardmore just becomes like a more like version with that age, but yeah, that would be really cool, really really cool to
mm,
taste.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes, Michael, I know you've looked on the website. I don't know if I should let you all down now, but yes, I don't think there are any bottles of this available. We made one big order of some whiskies, and we kept one of them each aside so that we could have the opportunity and drink them. And you can harass Chris and Ollie on their emails, Chris at thewhiskeybusiness.com.au. Just give them a shakedown if there is anything on tonight's tasting that really tickles your fancy. So yeah, I was gonna let you guys down easy later on, but may as well know now. But yeah, it's I do think as well, Michael, hit the nail on the head calling this a very polite peat. I've always
Hmm.
felt Ardmore is like very polite. It can be quite buttery as well, like really nice Irish butter.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice. Yeah, nice way to characterize it. It's yeah, the few heavily peated ones that we've had, um, to me, have been really like farmy, really quite rustic, and there's lots of grit to it, which it's not the same as a young Lefroy or a young um, Bowmore or something. It's just, yeah, it's very interesting. In fact, Bowmore actually is a good little comparison, I would say. Bowmore is nicely tempered at times, and it's got that kind of really robust spirit, but it's not punching you in the face. It's really, yeah, just kind of sits back and waits for you to discover.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, obviously Ardmore being a whiskey utilized across blends, I'm surprised but grateful that they do have a core range and they do have releases to kind of at least let people know they exist.
Yeah,
Kind
yeah.
of thing. So no, it's really good to see. Well, speaking of another blended whiskey situation, and speaking of Kalila as I was before, um, 17-year-old. Is this a sherry butt, bourbon butt? What's the deal
Uh,
with this?
First fill Oloroso, but is what I've got in my notes, which is yeah, just great Kalila. I think it's one of these distilleries again. Talking about some of these favorites here, but like Kalila is just almost pound for pound one of the best distilleries in Scotland. Has to be, just quality, consistency. You know, it's maybe not the most versatile, but even then, why do you need versatility if everything that you bottle is very good? And if woods all just take to your spirit in the various kind of manners that they do, then it's just incredible to still. Again, I've been talking about looking to be disappointed by distilleries before, and Kalila's that one that I always think, how can you mess this up? It's impossible almost. So, yeah, I think, yeah, younger Kalila's is incredible, older Kalila is incredible, and I don't think I would pick one over the other. I think I just always enjoy, if I'm always presented with an option for Kalila, I'll just want to try it more than anything, whether it's um, going to be the one that we bottle or the one that we kind of pick for a project. It doesn't really matter. It's almost just like a knee-jerk reaction now, because you just are always excited to see, be just, yeah, rewarded for that loyalty, I suppose, and that kind of consistency, and be like, oh yeah, of course this is good. But yeah, this has had a real nice kind of just elegant peat. Also, yeah, the sherry just seemed to work amazingly well with it. It wasn't too chunky, it wasn't too sulfury, it wasn't too um, thick and sticky. It was just really well like integrated, and it's just something you can't, like I say, you can't discount Kalila. Really, it's always gonna be
Yeah.
there for you.
Yeah, it's one of those distilleries. Like I've had it. I think I was chatting to Tetsuya from Highlander Inn and to Martin from Malt Barn. And I think like each of those conversations has been like, if you're presented with a Cowlila that sounds good on paper, like you don't even have to taste it. It's like a yes, please give me that one. It's you know, Mr. Consistent. Um, it's always gonna see you well, I feel like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the unpeated ones, I don't know if anybody has managed to try any unpeated Kalilas over the years. They're little just gems, absolutely just incredible.
Yeah. When
It
I
just
when I
shows you that,
worked at a bar, I was like, it's the series everyone forgot to collect.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, the little nugget that I found somewhere, which I can't remember where I read it, but it was just that it was when Kalila was rebuilt, it was um, either was it mapped on or designed on Clynelish, or was it the other way around? But essentially, the two of them architecturally are almost identical, which I never really appreciated before. Obviously, stills and things will be slightly different, but in terms of the way the buildings are all laid out, apparently they are very, very similar. And so, there's always this kind of yeah, I suppose, especially looking at the unpeated Kalilis, could you ever confuse, an unpeated Kalila with a Klein Leash. I wonder. I'm not sure. I've never done that before, but it's it's a fascinating distillery, and yeah, but you go and visit it, and it's a factory. It's it's a workhorse. It's making spirits for Johnny Walker. It's making the lovely stuff for your 12-year-old and the 25-year-old, and it's just there. It's not trying to shout about anything. It's not got a brand identity that people will be arguing about and pulling in all directions. It's just honest, which is really great.
Yeah, super good.
Mm.
Yeah, everyone's, it's beautiful. Never had a bad Kalila IB. Ian's starting to appreciate Kalila more as he goes through the IBs. I will say the distillery, the distiller's edition, I think it is. It's in
Hmm.
sherry cask finish for 9 months that they release. I do really enjoy that one. If I can get my hands on it, it's getting harder to find in Australia. But
Yeah.
yeah, Leo, eating campfire snow, sweet and peat is a combo that can't be beat. You're coming from Michael K's rhyming, literature title, but yeah, so yeah, campfire, barbecue peat, sweet on the taste. Yeah, absolutely beautiful. Well, I might run the poll. So, Sam, just a heads up, you can see how people are voting, same as me.
Cool. Wow. There we
I'll
go.
vote for your top two favorite whiskies of the night. I know it's going to be a very tricky one. Michael's already like, "Oh." um, but yeah, this is just like a beautiful expression of a Caldila. So yeah, I want to thank you, Sam. I know that you've got to head off soon, but yeah, thank you so much for like selecting these casks. I mean, like it can't be an easy job. You must see hundreds of casks, and then if you're doing the rum, the wine, the everything else coming through, like that's a huge job that you've got.
Yeah. But it's a pleasure when you get the right thing, and it's seeing it on lips as well. It's the whiskies for drinking. It's one of those things that we all have to remind ourselves, even though there's this amazing industry behind it. It's here for drinking, and as soon as you see people's reactions, when you do tastings like this, or even just for me, it's a colleague at work, tasting blind, and seeing that reaction. That's what it's all about. It's getting that kind of response. So yeah, no, really delighted to be able to talk about them, and hopefully, yeah, you've all enjoyed them. Was there? Oh, here's a weird question: was there one that people didn't like? Is there a least favorite of all these, or was there?
Yeah, well, I might drum roll here, and we can officially show the results, which is kind of, I suppose, where you find the one that wasn't the most loved. But the Ardmore got the least love, but it still got some votes.
Mm.
Um, the Imperial heading out in the lead was fantastic. I will say it was probably one of the best Imperials I've ever had in my career, and I've only had like three. But yeah, that was absolutely spectacular. Uh, so uh, the spread of votes just says that this was a really hard one. I think everyone in the group can probably agree that everything was great in its own unique way, and every whiskey on the tasting like really fills a different need, a different hole in your heart. But yeah, no, absolutely incredible lineup. And yeah, Leo says Ardmore was his number one, but it was hard to split from the Imperial. And yes, hopefully some more Royal Mile whiskey bottles will be available here. I have no doubt that after tasting these, we are gonna try and get our hands on some more. I signed up to the email mailing list when I was at the shop, and now I get notifications of all the delicious things that are coming that I can't get my hands on. So I might have to start nudging Chris and Ollie again some more to get more of these whiskies. But yeah, and Imperial. I think, is there any Imperial left? Is it long gone, Sam?
I think we still have some left. Yeah, it's we're down to the last few bottles. I think the only one out of all these actually that has sold out is the Ben Nevis. Unfortunately, that was literally in the last few days that kind of finally depleted. But yeah, the everything else I think is still available. So yeah, and there's
Right.
more to come as well. So yeah, please do stay in the loop. And if anybody has any questions, and if you want to send me an email, Emma, feel free to share my email if anybody's got any questions. And yeah, any comments even about the drams, and yeah, be more than happy to help.
Yeah,
We do ship to
100%.
us. You ship to
Yeah,
Australia for individuals, Leo? Yes, we do. We do. Yes, it will
yes.
be not the easiest, but yes, we do with DHL, and there'll be taxes and duty
Yeah.
and things, all the fun stuff. but
Yeah.
but we do ship. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. And yeah, though, watch out for the customs fees and stuff like that. It is, yeah, we will, if there's any of these bottles as well, send Chris an email and we'll either sort it out to get a bulk load of them if there's multiple people interested, or we can sort it individually through the shop as well. But thank you so much, Sam, for spending your afternoon and our evening with us.
Cool.
Hopefully we
Thank you so
can
much.
get you back on again with some more Royal Mile whiskies in the future. I have no doubt that we'll be making some more orders from the shop. So
Nice.
yeah, thank you
Yeah.
so
Thank you very
much.
much for
Thanks
having me,
everyone
and
as well.
thanks everybody, and yeah, hope you enjoyed the drams, and yeah, we'll maybe see you all soon.